evolution was very much controlled by nature. I'll give you an example of that. A gentleman who has written a very nice book. I would not give you the name because you'll immediately buy that book and start reading the whole. But he was experimenting with some oysters, and he had them first in Los Angeles, where the sea was. And he found out that when the tide was low, these shells used to open themselves up, the oysters. And when it was high tide, they would close down because the water should not run into them. And you know that the tide time is bound everywhere. Anybody can calculate it, sitting down here, what is the tide in Falkland. So he removed those shells from there, brought them to Ohio, which is very far away, and there's no sea. And he put them down there. And they were opening at the same time. Now see, the time changes according to the moon. So the water was acting according to the moon, and these oysters were also acting according to the moon. But when the time changed, they came to Ohio, still they had that habit and they were opening. But suddenly they changed and they took to the timing which would happen if the sea was there in Ohio. So they were so much bound still by nature. Nature controls them. Up to a great point, nature even controlled human beings. But in the animal stage, one has to know that to find out the difference between an animal and a vegetable, what happened was, first, the cellular wall was doubled. So element was first put into a cell to make a vegetable, and the vegetable was given a double wall to make it a human being, animal. Now, animal that has become a human being has a triple bond. That's why it's the confusion. That we call as human freedom, that we are free to do what we like. What's wrong? Correct? If somebody wants to commit suicide, what's wrong? Somebody wants to kill his father, what's wrong? Laws, according to many people, is all artificial, man-made, is correct. So what's wrong? So we were bound thrice. The third binding came when, as human beings, we started acting, creating our ego as a byproduct of that action, physical and mental. We developed ourselves into an egg. we became just like eggs. And this egg had 3 shells. First one of the human shell, second of the animal, and third that of the vegetables. And inside that were all the elements. That's how we are made. But for what? Why? Why this freedom was given to us? To get us confused? Because we had to go to a higher evolutionary state. And that higher evolutionary state has to give us complete freedom from all these 3 bondages. The vegetable bondage, which makes you stick to one place. The animal bondage, where you cannot think. And human bondage, where you think. Man can't live without thinking. It's a bondage. We can't get out of it. Like horns, it grows into your head. You can't stop it, Even if you cut your throat, you cannot stop it, some people say. It's surprising. It's so bad. It's such a bondage in us. All the time we think. This is the third bondage of human being. But what happens with this? When this bondage is broken, light comes in through the light, and this light gives you enlightenment in all these three prisons into which you are imprisoned. And you get a complete integration into all these different bondages within you. And you start seeing the absolute truth that all this is bound by one thread. All these elements, all these vegetables, animals, human beings are bound by one thread. And when you start seeing that thread as a witness, you start seeing the play of all these elements, of all these bondages, beautifully.